we are no longer being challenged and where our dreams have begun to essentially die. And so if you know that you are going to a space that doesn't move you, it's time to pivot. You owe it to yourself to discover your highest potential. You owe it to yourself to take the bull by the horns and be willing to go after your dreams. I realized that for myself in different seasons in life, but even more recently after I lost my mom, it's nothing like death, honestly speaking, that will have you begin to think about life in a very deep and complex way.
You're listening to the First Class Life Show hosted by Lindsey Vertner, a holistic personal development show for high-achieving leaders who desire to maximize their impact while creating a life full of purpose, fulfillment, and happiness. So grab a drink, grab your notebook, and let's get started.
Hey, First Class family. Welcome back to another episode of the First Class Life Show. And today I have the beautiful Chinasa Elue with me. And I'm excited to get into this discussion because I know a little bit of her background. And so I know that she is going to have some good tidbits, okay, to help us grow and develop as the high achieving leaders that we are. So you already know how we do. We gonna hop right to it. No time to waste. Hey girl, hey, how are you?
Hey girl, hey, I'm doing well today. How are you?
So good to have you here in the First Class Life Studios. And as I mentioned, I already know a little bit of your background, but I want you to share with the First Class family, like, who is Chinasa Elue really? Like, give us the juice, give us the good tea, and let us know, who are you, girl?
All right now. Well, let me pour a little glass then since we're pouring out some tea. All right, everyone. Hey, welcome. Lindsey, thank you so much for having me today. I'm so excited to be here and talk with you and your guest. So my name is Chinasa Elue. I am a mom to two wonderful kids, a wife to a wonderful hubby of almost 8 years. I am a Nigerian American based out of the Metro Atlanta area. I have a couple of different titles under my belt here. I am a professor. I am an entrepreneur. I run my own coaching and consulting business. And I'm a jack of all trades in a lot of different ways, right? In terms of my entrepreneurial ventures, I run a coaching and consulting business that in the past has traditionally supported professionals of color who have been navigating negative experiences in the workplace. I have since began to pivot now to do work around grief coaching and grief leadership, specifically looking at trauma-informed practices in the workplace. I know we'll get into some of these pieces a little bit later in our conversation, but I'm so glad to be here. The work that I'm doing is really fulfilling and enriching to me in a lot of different ways. So thank you so much.
Yes, get it. Okay, shout out to the Black educators, all right?
Okay.
Yes, just hearing that reminds me of a meme that I saw. Well, it wasn't a meme, it was more like a question that went viral. And the poster was like, they said, I'm just curious, how old were you when you had your first Black teacher? And luckily for me, my first one was in the 3rd grade. But after that, I don't recall. I know I didn't have one in middle school. I don't recall having one in high school. And I really don't recall having one in college either. And I got 2 degrees. So the fact that did I really have one? Like, I really have to sit and think about it. But her name was Mrs. Carla Rice, my 3rd grade teacher. And the fact that I still remember her whole full name let you know just how impactful it is to have that representation. So what led you to want to head in that direction and be, in that professional setting of Black academia?
Well, let me tell you something. You know, when you're a kid, people always ask you, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, I felt like when I was wrapping up graduate school that at my big age, I was still asking myself this question, what do I want to be when I grow up? Because honestly speaking, when I came into my doc program, I really thought that I was going to do leadership in higher education specifically. I didn't see myself going down the faculty route. I saw other faculty members. It wasn't my thing at the time. But it's always interesting when you have mentors who are able to speak life into areas that you didn't see for yourself. And I had two amazing mentors who came and spoke to me and were like, Chinasa, look, you're a phenomenal writer. On top of that, there are not a lot of Black professors in the field at large. You would make an excellent contributor to the field. And so I heard them, but I then began to really process what they were saying. And I saw that, okay, this might be an option for me. And I applied. When I was getting ready to graduate. I applied to leadership positions in higher ed, as well as faculty positions. And the first job I got was as a professor right out the gate from graduate school. So I guess they saw something I didn't see in the beginning, but I'm so glad that I took the pathway because it's been really interesting. It's really shaped my own professional journey for the past several years.
I love that. Oftentimes when we are going throughout life, sometimes we can dismiss the things that kind of just fall up on us. But I'm a big believer that nothing happens by chance. There are no coincidences. And so here you are. And now very easily, your job is a professor. So you mentioned that wasn't where you wanted to go. But once you got that, that acceptance to be a faculty after you applied, did you struggle with like, all right, wait, do I really want to do this? Or this is not how I saw my life going? What happened there?
I mean, I'll go ahead and pour this whole cup of tea right here because I'll be frank. When I started out teaching, I was young, a young Black professor. I'm still young. Let me not even age myself. Okay, I still fabulous. Still got it right. But I say that to say, a lot of times, especially as a Black woman in academic spaces, when I walked into a classroom teaching majority white students, a lot of them had not experienced a Black professional, a Black professor in that context. So when you said that meme you saw earlier, I was like, yes, that is the case in a lot of areas. We're not necessarily seen as knowledge producers. And so at the doctoral level, when you're walking into a classroom, at the collegiate level, when you're teaching students who are twice your age, who don't look like you or mirror you or your experiences, I experienced a lot of isms. And I mean to say the imposter syndrome was very prevalent in my story, but the discrimination, racism, ageism, you name it, it was there. And I did not know how to deal with it. Graduate school did not prepare you. It didn't prepare me to encounter any of the craziness that I dealt with in the classroom. But I think I'm so grateful to God for mentors, again, who were able to speak life into a dire situation because I didn't know how long I was going to remain in the field at large. Because a lot of times, especially when you're breaking into a new space, you're early in your career, you do begin to doubt yourself a lot of times and wondering, do I have the chops to make it? Can I actually do this? Can I actually do what I've been called to do? And I think the microaggressions did not help, right? The daily slights, snubs against me as a professional, as a person, began to deteriorate at my confidence. And I think those challenges really impacted me early on and were really some key pieces for me determining if I was going to stay in the field long term or leave. And so I'm grateful that I was able to learn how to leverage my voice in a place where I felt silenced coming in. And once I was able to gain my agency, gain control of my voice, and begin to leverage it to advocate for myself, I realized that this is not something that I'm only experiencing. It happens every day to professionals and leaders out here who are the token in their organization spaces, right? Who want to do good work, but they're struggling with the toxic environment, the chilly climate that meets them at the door when they walk into those spaces and they begin to wonder, do I belong? Am I actually called to do this work? And my answer is yes. But it's also at the same time, how do you figure out how to maintain your composure and maintain your dignity and your authenticity in that space without losing who you are as a person? And that's a skill that you have to build up over time.
And even if you hear about it often from other people, or maybe you don't hear about it, but we've heard at some point those stories where somebody else experienced this or somebody else experienced that. And even knowing the history of racism and all of those things in the US and just the history of racism against Black people in general, when it happens to you the first time, it still is very unsettling. And I know I had moments before this, but one significant moment as an adult in the workplace specifically, since, we're talking about our careers, is whenever I was in banking. So one of my very first real jobs was in banking. And then I worked in banking whenever I was an undergrad. And I remember I had answered the phone. Someone had called up to the bank, and the voice on the other phone was like, they were asking a question about something, and then he was like, it was that colored girl. That colored girl helped me, and like I was the only Black person in the bank, okay? It was me, and plus I remembered the interaction just not too long ago with him, and so I was taken aback just a little bit because it just came out so easily and so bluntly, and like I didn't know what to feel. I didn't know how to feel. And so I continued answering his questions. I was like, well, that girl was me. And when I hung up the phone, I remember I just kind of froze and I just stood there like, did that really happen? Like in this day and age, did that really happen? And I got choked up a little bit, and I still was just standing there. And then one of my coworkers, she looks at me and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I started to explain what had happened. And as I started to explain, like tears just started flowing down my face, like out of nowhere. I was still talking normally, so it wasn't like I was crying, but the tears were there. It was like I was crying, but not crying. And like she was like, "Oh, honey, come here. Like, go take a break." Like, I just remember that so vividly, and it was just so crazy to experience. And so what was that first moment that you had in your professional career where you're like, wait a minute, like describe that moment to us?
I think in a lot of ways, when I began to see my health start to decline, that was a pivotal piece for me in determining, like, whoa, this this environment is not conducive for you to be successful. And I think specifically, I mean, again, young, early 30s, and I'm in the prime of life, but I'm finding myself in the hospital thinking I'm having a stroke. But it's actually anxiety. It's the panic that's coming around every time I have to prepare to go into class. It's the mental anguish that was there, that was very prevalent in my journey while I was there, because I just hated and dreaded the days that I had to go in and teach, because I knew that there was going to be some experience, some encounter that I was going to have to face. And so when I began to have so much negative energy towards even trying to muster up enough unction to get out the bed, I was like, this cannot be normal. You are barely starting out in your career, and this is how you feel. You can't even get up. Like, I knew in that moment that something had to give. And I think in a lot of ways, there were mile markers along the way where I knew that, okay, there's something wrong here, right? That it can't always. Sometimes you're like, okay, yeah, I know I'm to a degree, right? You're aware of your faults, but I also knew that in that moment, I had to give myself a lot of self-compassion, because I said, it's not me, it's the systems that I'm working in, it's the structure that's in place, right? That is not conducive to me being able to thrive, because people aren't willing to move beyond the dimensions of my identity, who I am on the outside, and not acknowledge like the intelligence, the skill set, the personality that I bring into that space. And so when I realized that it didn't matter what I did, that I was still going to have issues because people weren't willing to move beyond that, I realized that I needed to get into a place where I was more supported. And so that was the impetus for me to begin to look for something else. And looking for something else, to be frank, didn't mean that I was not open to leaving academe. I have never been one to be wedded to a job. Like, I'm like, I really believe that it's not that deep, right? Like, there's always a way. There's always a ram in the bush, and that a way will be made for me. So I didn't let myself get tethered to the idea that I had to stay in academia, I had to be a professor. I was open and willing to embracing what my gifts and skill sets could lend themselves to in any field or opportunity that was presented before me. And so being open helped me a lot on the back end, being able to pivot and transition on.
Looking for amazing products to help boost your first class lifestyle? Then head over to firstclasslifeshop.com, where you can treat yourself to personal development books and workbooks, lifestyle affirmation cards, adult coloring books, mugs, notebooks, hoodies, t-shirts, leggings, and more. All products were designed to help you master your mindset, walk in your purpose, and live your first class life because you deserve it. So treat yourself today at firstclasslifeshop.com. Again, that's firstclasslifeshop.com.
I love that you mentioned that, being open, because especially once we put a lot of time and effort into something and it's not working out for us, then it's like, but I spent all these years in school, or I spent all this money, or I did all this work. And we get stuck and glued to that idea, like, all right, this is what I've been preparing myself for. This is what I have to do. And when things don't work out, or it's such a struggle, we feel like we have to stay in that place because we've put so much into it already. So what advice would you give to the first class family that's tuned in right now on how to essentially embrace the pivot whenever it's not quite working out the way you need it to work out?
Yes. I mean, such an awesome question. And I think, one of the key things here is that we have to essentially uncuff ourselves from what we think success looks like in a lot of ways, right? Just because we have time and energy invested in a particular industry or field, if you know at the core of your heart that this is not fulfilling you, if you know that you feel like a piece of you is dying every day as you wake up and go into that workplace, or if it's a business that you're doing and you know that your interests have shifted or the market is shifting as we see right now in everyday context, it's okay to pivot. It's okay to ask new questions and be exploratory in nature. The greatest thing that would be a disservice to ourselves is to stay in an area or a space where we are no longer growing, where we are no longer being challenged, and where our dreams have begun to essentially die. And so if you know that you are going to a space that doesn't move you, it's time to pivot. You owe it to yourself to discover your highest potential. You owe it to yourself to take the bull by the horns and be willing to go after your dreams. I realized that for myself in different seasons in life, but even more recently after I lost my mom, it's nothing like death, honestly speaking, that will have you begin to think about life in a very deep and complex way. And I realized in a lot of ways as I began to reflect on my time with my mom and life in general. And I asked myself, what would people say about me on the back end of my life, right? What would that look like? How would I want to be received? What kind of impact do I want to have? I began to ask myself different questions. And as I began to ponder those questions, I realized that I needed to be willing to embrace change. Change is hard. It's uncomfortable. It's difficult. But change is the greatest entry point to us being able to experience exponential growth and even being able to access a life that we didn't think was even possible. And so I think in a lot of ways, as I began to embrace the changes that I needed to make personally, I began to see doors open that I didn't even know were available to me, but I began to ask different questions. And those questions led to me seeking new opportunities that became more fulfilling and more in alignment with who I am today.
That's so good. Embrace the change and being just open-minded. And, as you were talking, it made me think about this fits in all areas of our lives, not just in our careers and professions, but also in our relationships, whether platonic or intimate. Oftentimes it's like, dang, I've been with this person 5 years. I've been with this person 10 years. I'm not trying to start over. But in your heart, you know that it's a dead end situation and that you should not be with this person anymore. So it has layers, and it impacts every area of our life. Just being willing to let go, especially when we think that, we've invested so much time, energy, money into the situation, and being open to the potentials and the possibilities that are generally right around the corner, but we have to be willing to just make that step and go there. So I love that. So what advice would you share on most effective ways to embrace the change or embrace the pivot?
Oh, I love that question so much because there's no right or wrong answer, right? I think this is going to look different based on who you are as a person. I think you have to begin to, one, as you begin to embrace the pivot, you just have to be willing to let go of the expected path, right? I say this oftentimes, is a scripted path that people are used to following is safe, is well known, is proven 1,000%, 1,000 times over, right? But sometimes that proven known path is not what fulfills us, right? And you realize that I am a little different here and I want to do things on my terms. And so I think as you begin to embrace the pivot, embracing the pivot, first of all, means asking yourself, what do you need to make the transition? What conditions would work best for you, right? How do you want to experience your transition? Because a lot of times we think about pivot or change or embrace an opportunity. We're like, oh, what does that look like? It's just like you want to vomit thinking about, I got bills to pay, adulting is real. Okay, I got all these responsibilities. What does this look like? And so it doesn't mean you quit your job tomorrow or you close down the business today or you jump out the relationship the next day, right? But it does mean that you begin to ask yourself, okay, before I even begin to make all these shifts and moves, how do I actually want to feel at the end of this process? What is most important to me? I think in a lot of ways for me, I want to say, I wanted to feel fulfilled. I wanted to know that I was walking in alignment. I wanted to feel that I was being helpful and of good use to those that I've been called to serve. And I wanted to know that at the end of the day, when it was all said and done, that I lived a very fulfilled and full life. And so that meant that, okay, asking myself, well, what gives you fulfillment? What gives you joy in life in general, right? How do you want to navigate your career? What kind of career opportunities are you open to? And so the questions just began to radiate from there. And so I think as you begin to think about the pivot, first think about the parameters for how the pivot needs to unfold. How do you want to experience it? You don't want to be broke. Let's be real. Okay. So you want to make sure, okay, that some bags are secured. Okay. We're not going to be out here living in these streets. Okay. So first of all, we're going to make sure everything is in alignment. But maybe it's if you're a professional, but there's an entrepreneurial spirit inside of you that you want to, explore. Maybe you start a side hustle on the low, right? You start seeing how you can leverage your gifts and opportunities to begin to build up that clientele. And then over time, as you pick up steam, it may mean that, okay, I'm really enjoying this. The money's adding up. The math is math and it's making sense right now. All right, I'm ready to pivot and move on, right? Pivoting smart, pivoting in a way that keeps into account all of the different moving pieces of our lives because we are not static individuals. We have multiple things that inform and shape our decision-making process. So keeping that at your core, be willing to read books, go to seminars, go to webinars, talk to people, network, get on LinkedIn. I mean, I'm naming some things because these things have worked for me and this is not a book. There are a host of different things that fulfill us. Get into a new hobby, something that is of interest, but be a lifelong learner. Be willing to tap into those things that you put on the bookshelf. Pull them off the shelf. What do you want to do? What are those dreams that you've held on to, saying, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it next year? Do it now. Do it now. Tomorrow's not promised. Just start.
Yes, tomorrow is not promised. And I have to repeat that because we get so, it's like, we get so, what word am I looking for? Well, where I'm going with, because I can't think of, it's like it's on the tip of my tongue, but it's not coming out. But, tomorrow isn't promised. And we like to wake up and think that, oh, we have all year or we have next year. We have 50 more years that we're going to live. So it's okay if I start this later. It's okay if I start this, once the kids are gone to school or once I feel ready. Well, first of all, you never truly feel ready whenever you're exploring different spaces, but we feel like we're owed time, but we see it all the time where kids have passed away, teenagers have passed away, young adults have passed away. I've even had my own experience with, being in a quote fatal car wreck, but obviously I'm still here, and we are not guaranteed tomorrow at all. And so to think that we do have the time, you really never know. Like, your next breath could be your last. You could walk out the door and not make it home. You could go to bed and not wake up the next morning. And I think that we take for granted how precious life truly is. And so we have to be intentional about living life for the right now and not for the time that we think we have. Hopefully we do have that time, but it's not guaranteed to anyone. The one for sure factor that everyone will experience is death, period. You don't know when, you don't know how, but you're going to die. And I don't mean to be like, bleak about it, but it's important. We got to talk about the important issues that impact us as leaders. At some point, your life is going to come to an end. And so you have to live for the right now. What can I do to experience joy? What can I do to make an impact as a leader? Or, just live my life in a fulfilling way that makes me smile at the end of the night. So thank you for sharing that. And I know that you've had your own experience with grief. Would you mind sharing a little bit about that?
I think, my entree into grief has been one that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, to be honest with you. I lost my mom actually 3 years ago, and she passed away from cancer. And so that was my first experience losing someone in my immediate family, someone that was with me from birth, right? And to walk with her throughout my entire life and to get to a place where we didn't know, we were just living life, making plans and thinking that we had a host of years ahead of us. But we didn't know that her life was going to be cut short by an illness. And I think walking through grief has been one of the most eye-opening, heart-wrenching experiences in my life. And in a lot of ways, it's taught me so much, being able to just figure out how to pick up the pieces and not necessarily move on from my mom, but figuring out how do I continue to live a fulfilling life, the life that she would want me to still enjoy and live, and honor her memory in spite of the very deep and present pain that is in my heart for her. And that has been a very big challenge in a lot of ways, because in my mind, it still doesn't register sometimes that she's not here, but my heart knows the truth. And so I have to recognize that. And so I honor her by finding meaning in work. I honor her by keeping her legacy alive and how I even raise my own children. I see the ways that she was loving and caring and empathetic towards me and my siblings. And that has also afforded me a roadmap in how I parent my own children and the legacy that she's left behind. So that space, walking through grief and to be frank, still being in, I don't think you ever come out of grief, to be honest. I think you learn to live with the pain of it all. And some days the pain is more heavier than others, right? But I think it's just provided me with a very, very deep appreciation for life and has really helped me to move towards meaning with some of the work I'm doing now around grief leadership and around grief coaching specifically, because I see a very deep need for it, especially in African American communities where a lot of times we're told to be strong. We're told to, especially with me being the oldest, there people were coming to me saying, "Hey, you're the mom now," and I was like, "Whoa." Listen, that's a little deep. Okay, look, I had a very real and active and present mom. For you to just come and say, "Hey, I knight you as mom," I'm like, "Yo, I had to do that," okay? Because for me, I'm like, you're trying to erase a very present person that has been in our lives. And that title, I'm a mom in my own right to my own kids, but to now say I have to extend that to my siblings where I'm their big sister was a stretch for me. And so I, even in grief, had to learn how to speak up for what I needed and to advocate and say, hey, that's not something that I appreciate being said towards me at this time. And so it's opened up the door to some really needed conversations, and especially around grief, because I don't think we don't want to talk about our emotions a lot. I think we don't want to feel the pain, but the only way to get through grief is to go through it. You got to go to the white meat. You got to get in there, all of it, all of the messiness of it all. You have to experience it as part of the healing process. You got to cry it out. You got to release it. You got to move your body. I realized, even in my grieving, that movement is medicinal. Exercise is medicinal for me. You got to move your body. You cannot be stagnant. You can't hold that grief inside. You got to release it. And so I've learned so much over my grief journey, and it's led me now to the point where I want to be able to support others in their own. It's a very humbling process. It's an honor to be able to walk with people as they're navigating loss. I don't take it lightly because I know how painful it is. And so I'm very grateful to be able to do the work that I'm doing now, even the research that I'm doing now around grief. It's an honor to be able to do it.
Well, my condolences. Definitely want to get more into what grief looks like in leadership or how it impacts your leadership. But you said something that I think is important to point out as far as given this new title that you didn't ask for. Because what happens, and I see it all the time, is that we accept them or we feel obligated to accept them. And then we're upset with all of the negative experiences and negative emotions that come along with accepting this title that we didn't ask for, nor did we want. And so what would you say is a good tip or, a self-care practice, or how can someone say, I do not want this? Like you said that you were able to express to your siblings, like, look, I'm not trying to be y'all's mama, okay? I'm your big sister. I'm going to continue to do that. But you didn't say it like that. But, that's what I heard in my head. Like, I ain't your mama, okay? So what advice would you have to being able to decline these expectations of other people? Because oftentimes that's something that really brings a lot of leaders down, is that we are trying to live up to the expectations of other people and who they think we should be, instead of living up to the expectations of who we desire to be or who God called us to be.
I think, when people were trying to knight me with that title, it wasn't even my siblings, because they knew that I was big sis. But I mentioned earlier that I'm Nigerian American. I'm also a Christian, and I'll say this to be frank. I think in faith-based circles, there's a scripture that says we don't grieve like the unbelievers do. And I think in a lot of ways, people kept throwing that scripture at me when they would see me in church weeping or crying or beside myself. I went through what I call the year of first, where every milestone, whether it was my birthday or the first Thanksgiving without mommy or the first Christmas without her, I was weeping. And I was in watch night service, crossing into the new year without her. And we were counting down 3, 2, 1, boom. And I fell in my pew and I was weeping. And people were like, gee, why are you still crying? Why are you like, it's okay. You know where she is. I get that. But I'm going to need you to back up and give me 50 feet, because these tears got to fall. They got to fall unless it's going to be inside. I'm going to internalize the angst, the suffering, the sadness is going to remain inside of me. In a lot of ways, people look at crying and tears as a sign of weakness. And I challenge that by saying it's a sign of strength, because someone who's in tune with their emotions and able to express themselves clearly is wise enough to understand that I love this person so deeply that I have no choice but to grieve them deeply. And I owed it to my mom to grieve her as deeply and as long as I needed to. And I needed people to understand, and I had to demonstrate that. I had to model it for others, that this is how I am choosing to grieve my mother. And it may go against your norms or how you've allowed yourself to do it. But I think there's beauty in a lot of ways with honoring who we are as people and how we choose to express our emotions, right? There's no roadmap here. And I think even as leaders who are looking for ways to debunk expectations people placed on us, or to walk it back from what people are thinking we should be doing because so and so did this when they were here. You have to a lot of times again be willing to own your own story and your own narrative, realizing that you are a completely different person who has a completely different way of doing things, and you have the right to charter a new path for yourself. People cannot determine what things need to look like for you when you are not that person. You are different by design and by nature. And so when you honor that and don't demean yourself, don't ridicule yourself for who you are, like, man, why can't I get over this? Why am I always emotional? No, that's who you are. It's okay. It's okay to cry. It's okay that little Johnny over there got over their grief in 5 weeks or 6 months, and it's year 1 or year 2, and you still find yourself weeping at different triggers. Sometimes things will remind you of that person. Again, I don't think it's a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you are wise enough to allow yourself the opportunity to honor the person in season, in that particular moment, whenever those emotions arise, and give them the honor and the love that they are due. And I see nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's been the most cathartic thing for me in my healing process as I continue to move forward, is recognizing that I'm going to cry. And if you're scared of tears, I'm sorry. It is what it is, but this is who I am. I've cried in professional settings before. I've choked back I mean, all the whole nine. And I'm very open in saying, hey, it's a hard day for me. If you don't mind, can we reschedule? Be willing to reshift some things, right? If it's a little bit harder. In this day and age, with everything that's going on, I think we could all use some days where, you know what, this is a really hard day for me. I need a little time. Hey, let's just reschedule this for a later meeting date, right? Because today's just not a good day. And sometimes you feel comfortable enough to share with people the reason why. Other times you may not. But I've leaned towards being more transparent and sharing that, hey, I'm just having a moment. If you just give me 15 minutes, I'll be back. And I've had no issues doing that. I know, again, every organization is different, but I think you have to be true to yourself overall.
Are you loving the First Class Life Show? Then join our private Patreon community. Not only will you help to support our ability to provide you with great content, but you can also get exclusive perks like bonus videos and resources, discounts, episode transcripts, and more. So what are you waiting for? Join today at patreon.com/First Class Life. Again, that's Patreon, patreon.com/First Class Life.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that was some good stuff. And I think it's very important that we are true to ourselves in all of the ways, because it makes life easier. That doesn't mean you won't have obstacles, because that's what life is. Like, we all have our various obstacles that we go through, but being true to yourself makes it easier to go through life. It helps make life more fulfilling and purposeful, because we aren't, hiding behind this mask that we put on. We aren't hiding behind our titles or our roles or things like that. And we are genuinely being who we are called to be, who we desire to be. We are doing things that makes us happy. We are doing things that, brings us peace. And we are letting go of what it should look like, whatever that it is for you. And in this case, that it was grieving. Well, like you said, it's been 5 months. It's been such and such time. You should be over it by now. Says who? Says who? We are all different. We all experience different things. So it's important that we acknowledge our it, and that we create our own rules for our it.
I agree. You have to.
That was so good. Now, we're going to take a little break, okay? We are going to play a little game, and I think, we getting deep over here, but that's what we do on the First Class Life Show. We talk about the nitty gritty, because these things are important and they do impact us as we are growing and developing into the best person that we can possibly be. So if you don't mind, we're going to play a little game.
Cool.
Is that cool with you? Let me get my timer here. And it's a real easy game. All you got to do is fill in the blank, okay? But you got to do it in 10 seconds or less. All right. So if you miss the buzzer, everybody tuned in is going to need a consequence. So what do you want their consequence to be? It could be they got to do 10 push-ups. They got to run a lap. It could be they got to turn off Netflix for 10 minutes. I don't know. It could be a shot of whiskey. You decide what you want their consequence to be, okay?
I'm ready.
Okay, so we'll start with something easy, and it'll be, what is your favorite food specifically?
Plantain. Fried plantain specifically.
Fried plantain.
Well, you know. Come on.
Okay. Yes. Now, I like mine sweet.
Yellow all day. Okay.
Okay. I remember one time I ordered, and they were not the sweet ones, and I was like, that's not what I wanted. If I'm getting them, I want the sweet stuff. So what is your favorite month and why? Go.
December, for the holidays, obviously. And also, it's always a time of rest and reflection for me. It's at the end of the year, everything's winding down. We're in a joyous mood, all the things. Yeah, I love it.
Okay. Nice. What is your favorite song, title, and artist? Go.
I would say my favorite artist, hands down, is India Ari. I love her. I am thinking of her. My favorite song is The Little Things. There's a song that she has, The Little Things, and she talks about all of the little things in life. It's I don't want to sing it. I'm not a singer, so I'm not going to try you today, nor your audience. Okay, but if you go pull it up, it's called The Little Things by India Ari, and she talks about being grateful and having gratitude towards the simple things, the little things, the things that money literally cannot buy. And those are the things that bring joy. So I love that song. I put it on repeat when I'm working. It gets me in the groove right away. So yes.
Mm-hmm. And it is so important because we like to think that life is made up of these big moments that drastically change our life, but it's the little everyday things, whether negative or positive, that create the life that we're living in. So good reminder. What is your favorite book, title, and author? Go.
My favorite book, I would say I read a lot of books. Whew, that's a hard one. One that just came to my mind, I'm just going to release it. It's called Essentialism by Greg McGowan. Yeah.
So you missed the buzzer, but repeat it again. Essentialism by.
I like the book a lot because, again, in this day and age, I'm looking to become more minimalistic in determining what and where to spend my time and energy. And that book does an excellent job of helping us ask some important questions and thinking strategically about what is absolutely essential for us during our time on this earth. So I think you got to read that book once a year, to be honest. It's a good one. It's a good one.
Got it. And since you missed the buzzer, what is everyone's consequence?
The consequence is you got to log out of your favorite social media app for the day.
Ooh, for the day, not even
for the day.
She said
and go do something fun. Go outside.
Okay. I hope y'all are up for the challenge, and y'all better do it. Okay, y'all better do it. So what is your favorite place to travel specifically?
Ooh, anything tropical. More recently, I just went to Jamaica, and take me any day. Okay, one love all day. Love it. Yes.
A funny story. First time I went to Jamaica, I swear I got married like 15 times throughout the week. Every time I turn around, it was somebody, will you marry me? Will you be my wife? I'm like, wait. First of all, I'm already married. Second of all, no.
Yes.
Next. What is your favorite relaxing activity?
Ooh, sleeping. Hands down. because I don't get to sleep often with these two young kids here. But whenever I can get a quick cat nap in, please believe I've gotten my whole life that day. So a quick nap will relax me in a heartbeat, or some soothing music around a pool of water, whether it's the pool, the beach, an ocean, or a lake. I'm in a good place when there's water.
Nice, nice. Now, I feel like you'd have something good for this next one, so we're going to go with that. What is your favorite quote?
Ooh,
Go.
the one that just came to my mind is they tried to bury us, but they didn't know we were. They tried to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds. Let me make sure I'm over here. Like, let me make sure I'm quoting it correctly. But I believe it's a Mexican proverb, if I'm not mistaken, and I've seen it in a lot of different spaces. But yeah, they tried to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds. And I think that speaks to the fact of the matter is that a lot of times people can try and bury us. They can try and sleep on our dreams, sleep on who we are as people, but they don't even know that those are seeds that are helping us grow and elevate to the next level. And so in a lot of ways, you can try and bury me, you can try and keep me down, but you don't even know it's a seed that you're planting, because I'm still going to rise. I'm going to flourish. I'm going to be fruitful. I will multiply. Okay. You will watch. You will see me grow. Okay.
And we are right in alignment with that quote, because, we have to be very intentional about making sure that we are buried instead of planted. So, excuse me, I said that backwards. Making sure we're planted instead of buried.
It's all good. I got it. I'm right here with you.
Yes. So I have another question for you, and the game is over.
Absolutely.
Thank you for playing. We call that first class favorites, okay? And make sure that if you are tuned in, you become a member of our private Patreon community, because that's where you will get access to our first class favorite things. All right. It's our own little version. And you will be able to have our first class favorite playlist, book reading list, places of travel, because we're all about being cultured, and relaxing activities, because we prioritize self-care in our lives. And it's uniquely curated by all of the phenomenal guests that have been here on the First Class Life show. So if you want access to that content, make sure you are a member of our private Patreon community, and you will get to see the list. Okay? So with that said, I have to ask you a signature question that I have to ask all of my guests, because living your first class life is about living the life that you desire fully. It's about being intentional about the life you're creating for yourself. And there are so many different factors that go into creating a life full of purpose, fulfillment, and happiness. And so First Class Life is actually an acronym. And each letter of First Class Life stands for the different characteristics and skills that you want to embody into your lifestyle, so that you can do just that, create a life full of purpose, fulfillment, and happiness, while impacting the world, yes? Now, I'm not going to go and explain what all of those factors are right now. If you want to find out what they are, then you can do one of two things. You can either go to firstclasslifeshop.com and purchase the book, First Class Life, 10 Key Factors for Creating a Life Full of Purpose, Fulfillment, and Happiness. Or you can go back and listen to the very first episode of the First Class Life show, where I explain each of them in detail. But for now, we want to ask our lovely, lovely guest, Miss Chinasa, what factor do you feel that you resonate with the most?
I mean, I think the whole acronym is phenomenal. First of all, let me just say that. Okay. So, I mean, I saw myself in all of them. But if I had to pick one today, I would say I for intentional. And I say intentional because I think we have to live life intentionally, and being very critical to not sleep on ourselves in this lifetime. That I keep saying this a lot, but there are things that we are uniquely designed and positioned to do while we are here on this side of heaven. And I don't want us to miss the mark by being so caught up in just the monotony of the day, right? Doing the things that are rotes and just part of the day-to-day that bore us, that don't bring us alive, right? And not being intentional about tapping into our gifts, our talents, our intellects, our skills. We have to be intentional about ourselves. We have to take it seriously and know that we have something that we've been called to do. We were created for a purpose, with a purpose for a time like this, and that we have to mobilize all of our gifts, our talents to do what we've been called to do. So intentionality, finishing the work, completing what we started, being a completer. That's the big thing for me right now, completing all day, every day. So being intentional, hands down, is key.
Yeah, you got to. You got to. Thank you for sharing that. Now, let us know, how do you impact the world as a leader today?
Ooh, that's a wonderful question. I think in a lot of ways I impact the world with just a host of different things I'm able to offer. I think a big piece for me being able to impact the world was one, I share with you a lot of issues I had earlier on in my career, but I think the biggest piece for me has been being able to leverage and mobilize my own voice to be more forthcoming and knowing that I have something to say. I think we all have something to say in a lot of ways. And we get nervous thinking, do I have what it takes? Should I be out here, speaking my truth and honoring my own journey and my story? And I think I encourage leaders by encouraging people to tap into the essence of who they are, by actualizing and mobilizing their voices, by encouraging them, even when they don't see the good in themselves, to know that, look, you can do it. There may have been no one else has done it in this particular manner, but you have the opportunity to do it in a way that's true to you, that doesn't devalue who you are as a person, that doesn't feel icky on the inside or make it feel like you're selling your soul to chase a dream, but to know that you can do things that are in alignment with you physically, emotionally, and spiritually, that maintain who you are as a whole person and integrity. And so I do that through my speaking. I speak a lot to different audiences, to be honest, on a host of different topics. But my overall goal in doing that is to make sure people leave feeling equipped and empowered to do what they need to do. I do that in my coaching people through very difficult and challenging situations in their respective personal and professional lives by helping them to feel that they have everything inside of them for the days ahead. A lot of times we don't feel like we have any answers. We don't have anything inside of us. We need to go to an expert. I don't espouse to this guru or expert mentality. Even if I have a doctor in front of my name, I'm like, look, I'm not the kind of doctor that can save your life. I don't do surgery. What I do is help you to realize that you have it already inside of you. I ask you the powerful questions. We do the strategy sessions. I give you the tools for you to mobilize what's already there. And I honor people for everything that they possess, because you are brilliant in your own right. And sometimes we just need a reminder that we are called to do this work. We're not new to this. We are true to this, and we can do it. You can do it. We all can.
Do you want to be surrounded by other high-achieving women who are working on their goals just like you? Are you looking for your circle that's passionate about their own growth yet still wants to see you shine? Do you desire to be supported through collaborations and connections instead of competition? Then Cowork and Chill is your place to be. Cowork and Chill is a hybrid of virtual co-working and virtual networking. It's a community of women who are striving to build living legacies. This is the space to create meaningful relationships with other equally yoked women where you're being poured into just as much as you pour out. So if you're looking for your crew for supportive accountability, then sign up today at coworkandchill.com. That's COWORKANDCHILL, coworkandchill.com.
Yes, I love that. I love that. And I have one more question for you. And that is, what advice would you give as far as how to create your own narrative?
That's a phenomenal question there. Okay. That's so loaded too at the same time. How do you create your own narrative? I think first of all, you have to know what your narrative is, right? A lot of times we have a lot of voices, a lot of people who are trying to put things on us that don't belong to us, putting words and different types of descriptions and verbiage on us that doesn't fully align with who we are as people. So I think a big piece of that is one, taking off the garbage that does not suit us or was never intended to fit on us in the first place. What mindsets have we bought into that are a byproduct of some toxic environments or toxic people that we've allowed ourselves to be surrounded by? When you realize that the ways that perhaps you may be thinking right now in real time are a byproduct of some craziness, some of the foolishness that we've been a part of, you make the choice to say, one, I choose to no longer involve myself in those particular relationships, communities, organizations, and I choose instead to go into a space where I feel fulfilled, affirmed, and valued. And then from that healthier space, you begin to craft your own narrative. And you ask yourself, who do I want to be seen as in this current moment in time? Who am I at my core? What do I value? Where do I want to have my impact lie? You begin to ask those questions from a clearer perspective outside of all the toxicity. And then you begin to walk forward in crafting your narrative, doing activities and actions and things of that nature to move you closer to the more holistic version of your story that you've been working towards all along. A lot of that comes through first assessing your current environment and asking yourself, is this conducive for optimal growth? And if it is not, I want to encourage you to try and align yourself as quickly as you can into spaces, organizations, relationships, and people that will help foster your growth.
And a mic drop on that. See, look. You got to be intentional about all of those things. Yes. So thank you for being a phenomenal guest. Please let the First Class family know, how can we find you on these internet streets?
Yes, the internet streets are always talking. So if you want to find me, I am on Twitter and most active on Instagram, to be frank, at Dr. Chinasa Elue. So that's at Dr. DrChinasa Elue. Or you can visit my website at www.drchinasaelue.com. And you can find me on those internet streets and reach out to me. I would love to chat with you or answer any lingering questions from our talk today.
And for all my audio listeners, all of this will be right in the description in the show notes, so you can just click it. But let me just repeat that one more time. DrChinasa Elue. All right. So put some respect on her name, okay? Now, do you have any final advice on how we can create a first class?
I mean, you're doing it now by listening to this podcast, first of all. So let me go ahead and just do those. Okay. Step one. Okay. You already started. I think step two would be, honestly, we've talked about so much today. I just want to encourage everyone, again, to just, I keep saying intentionality is key here, but intentionality and consistency, to be honest. Be honest with yourself. What do you want in this life? I think we gotta ask ourselves that question. What do you want? What do you want in love, in life, in relationships, in business, in your career, you name it? What do you want? We're so used to hearing what people think we should want at these particular markers in our lives that we don't even have the opportunity to reflect at times and think about, is this truly what I really desire? So pause real quick and just ask yourself, what do I want right now in real time? Is this conducive or in alignment with where I see myself going? And if it's not, I want to encourage you to do a hard stop. I don't care how many years you've been in that thing, do a hard stop and make that sharp right and pivot, because you owe it to yourself to discover all of the things that God has called for you on this land. Like, there is so much that we have been called to. And if you are just doing the day-to-day because somebody said so, or because you've invested so much time and energy in the space, you're like, I'm too old to pivot. I'm too old to leave. You're not old, okay? I think age is a mindset here. We are young in spirit, okay? You still have time. And as long as we have breath, there's life and there's hope. So get to it. There's work to do. And so don't let your work leave you behind. Be intentional about completing your work. And I don't mean physical work with your 9 to 5. What I mean is your life's work, your purpose, your intellect, your wisdom, your gifts. What is it you've been called to do And who have you been called to serve? And go there with everything in you and flourish.
Okay. Go out there and flourish, y'all. Listen, thank you for tuning in, First Class family, for another episode of the First Class Live Show. I know that you could be doing anything in the world right now, but you are tuned in here with us, and we do not take that lightly. We are very grateful. And make sure you keep going out there and maximizing your impact while creating a life full of purpose, fulfillment, and happiness. Why? Because you deserve it. Okay? So until next time, see you later. Bye.
Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. But please be sure to subscribe to the First Class Life Show. And don't forget to rate, leave a review, and join our private community so that we can continue to provide you with great personal development conversations to help you maximize your impact while creating a life full of purpose, fulfillment, and happiness. You deserve it.